Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I appreciate you being here. So, shine theory. In this video, my friend and I are going to talk you through and unpack and just have like a really awesome cerebral conversation all about shine theory, which is the way of living of uplifting others. So like we all win together, we lose together, and how that manifests in the workplace as well as at home in our relationships, just in general, our interpersonal relationships. We're going to talk about how you start to live this kind of life, the benefits of living this life, and some of the challenges that you have when you live this life, and some advice for how you can really engage and begin to grow into this person who shines their light and uplifts others instead of living in this environment of competing or feeling like you need to protect what you have because of a sense of lack. So like this video and subscribe so you get more content and notifications when I post it, and to join this awesome community of people who are learning to be their authentic selves and learning all kinds of awesome tricks and things along the way. So without further ado, let's talk about shine theory. Welcome, Chelsea. Amazing. Okay, so for everyone, so this is our first podcast. So my big thing I just joked about before we started recording is being like, okay, this isn't weird at all. So our goal is just like have a really good conversation. We spend time on Marco Polo if anyone has it. Not a sponsored post, but we would welcome it. And just talking about real deep stuff that, I feel like people love but have a hard time finding that in people. So this is one of my besties, Chelsea. She's in LA right now in El Segundo. And she's a beautiful soul. And I'm super excited for her to share and just unpack this thing that she taught me about many years ago at work, called shine theory. So yeah, what's up, Chelsea? How's it going,
I
babe?
mean, look, shine theory was introduced to me super early on by one of my first mentors, and it completely changed how I operated and is totally plugged into kind of who I am, kind of positive personality. As Matt, you know me well, so I'm pumped to like be here to talk about it and just talk with you,
Oh,
my
I
dear
love it.
friend, so far away.
I know, this is so fun. Oh, this is wild. So for everyone who doesn't know, I just moved to New York 6 months ago. So like, big new chapter, but I'm stoked like to have this kind of thing that hopefully becomes a regular thing with just people who inspire me. And I think, hopefully inspire you. So, all right. So like, I think the nitty gritty. So like shine theory, I'm familiar with it, but why don't you give like a little rundown for people who may not be as familiar with it, if you don't
Yeah,
mind?
I'd be happy to. So shine theory was created, or the name of the concept was created by two people, Anne Friedman, who was one of my first mentors, and her best friend and business partner and long distance bestie, Amanito
Wow.
So. And the idea being, you ask the question, are people better as collaborators or competitors? And for the most part, people answer collaborators. So shine theory is this concept that says, can we invest in one another? Can we take what we have, the confidence we have, the creativity we have, and share it with one another and push our friends and our coworkers and strangers to be better for us being there and push them to be their best self? So the idea is, I only shine when you shine, and you only shine when I shine.
I
And
love
that's just
it.
contagious, right? So,
I love it. I mean, just like, I think that was one of the points that we clicked as friends because I feel like that's how I live my life, or at least like, over the years, it's been such an evolution, but like, I do remember a shift sometime in college where it was kind of like, okay, like, I don't know, maybe I didn't describe it, but looking back on it, I feel like that's the kind of life mantra that I was trying to figure out how to activate and like live. Um, because it's like, I think the first time you talked to me about it, we were talking a little bit about like work culture and things like that. And it was just like this one word, like uplift each other. I think it's like, we win together, we lose together. And this is
yeah,
like a work thing, right? But I was like in the midst of reading all these kind of self-help books, and I was like, all of these books are intended for the self, but they benefited me at work greatly because at the end of the day, it's like interpersonal relationships,
yeah.
right? So like I thought that was pretty fascinating and like something that I think is happening in culture, but is far from like the norm.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds so easy, right? Like, be good to one another, push one another, have no ego, and yet you don't see that a lot. And I actually think that the kind of systems created, especially in the workplace, go against that mantra. So it seems so unnatural and so weird to actually be like, "Hey, can I help you? Can I lift you up?" Um, but Matt, I first learned about it in one of my first jobs, my first real job, and they had this mentorship program where I got matched up with, you know, this wonderful woman who was the editor in chief, so a really big deal. And here I felt like a little underling, as we all do, kind of in our first jobs, where we know nothing. And I was like, oh, I won the lottery. I'm so excited about this woman who everyone loved, and she really pushed her team in a beautiful way rather than in a harsh way. And so I remember our first lunch, and we sat down, and I was like, thank you so much for taking the time to mentor me. It's a really big deal. I know you have a really big schedule. I'm sorry to be an inconvenience to you. And she shut me down and she was like, stop. We are here for each other. I'm going to learn as much from you as you're going to learn from me. And that was it. And from then on, it went from this to being equal. And that's the way it should be. We're all humans, right?
I mean, channeling my inner, let's say, 23-year-old in my first job, which was horribly toxic, like that is like, like, I don't know if I heard that as a 23-year-old, it would be like such a mind fuck because it's like, I don't know, like culture in general, like we, at least in the US, I mean, many countries, but like there's that traditional corporate hierarchy situation. And so it's like, I remember a similar comment from one of our ECDs who is an amazing, is not was, is currently present still, an amazing woman and just honestly an inspiring person in general. And I remember one of our very entry level, I think intern turned employee, in meetings would come into a small room like it's weird that I can't remember the rooms in LA anymore. It's so weird.
Same.
And she would always sit on the floor, like to like give like the more senior people like a chair. And I remember her saying to the girl, like, yo, like if you got here first, like sit in a chair, like have a seat at the table. You don't need to sit on the floor because she basically was, and I love that she kind of passed along that advice, but not in a way that made her feel weird and basically empowered her. Empowered, I like that word a lot. Empowered her to be like, have a seat at the table, like have an opinion on projects. That I think, at least in my first job, and even learning the second, like in my next few, is like navigating like hierarchy. And for me, like I do a flat. I don't care if you are the CMO of whatever. I don't see you as a better person than me. You know things that I don't know, and I can guarantee you I also know things that you don't know.
Yeah.
And like I don't find people like in general, like, and I think I've always had this thought, which is kind of why I've always been quite rebellious, is like, and it's not even rebellious, it's actually just normal, is being like, we're just like two people, like, this is us, like, so that I thought was a beautiful moment of just like this micro moment of like, it probably like had a click in her mind, maybe like, and felt empowered like for the rest of whatever the next chapter that she needed, like empowerment, which I thought was super cool. Right.
I mean, that's amazing because I think that the hierarchy feels really weird and unnatural, but it's there in the workplace. And I hear a lot about insubordination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knocked out a turn, you didn't say what I needed you to say, you're pushing against the ask that I gave you. But I think that comes from the person who says it's insubordination, the person who is above, who has more control. And I think you limit people when there is that context, instead of saying whatever you have is ours, bring it to the table, let's talk about it. And I think there needs to be respect 100% for anyone who's in a workplace. That goes both ways, but I think there should be room for a voice and letting people express, because if not, like, you're letting things go off the table. Like, there are things that there's magic that can exist that won't exist that way. But yeah. Yeah.
I think also, like, in general, I think a lot of people, especially in big cities like LA and like New York, where a lot of people don't have, like, let's say, an established network of people, like those moments where you interact with someone like us or like the EC or whoever, or you like your former mentor, who just are straight up authentic and real and uplift people. I think it genuinely transforms them, and whether it be a micro or a macro way, but like they might not have that in their like at all where they are in their current stage in life, where they have people uplifting them, or they don't have a family who's like super into like lifting all boats because it's perceived as ego and narcissistic and shit like that. um like I think what's interesting is like one of the questions I have is like, like for people, I think for a lot of people, I think they don't like it sounds good. Like do unto you as like others, like be the change you want to see. But like for me, it really clicked when I started being super conscious of my behavior and almost doing like tests, like, or at least I was just like aware of like action and result or non-action and result. And being like, okay, when I act this way and when I uplift people, like I have seen the result. I have seen the positivity come my way, which isn't expected, but it's just like I've seen the impact of like this way of living. And I think that's the missing link that people like, it's like, I need to see it to believe it. Um, but for me, it like sealed the deal. I was like, my life has gotten nothing but exponentially better day by day by truly living like with this shine theory in mind.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting. Like, I'm like, as much as we want to like teach or help people or like show them the light or just like because it's easy, it's not easy but it's easy, it's like an easy thing that just takes like effort, right? um and it's funny, like, I mean, depending on your level of comfortability, like I feel like when we were last working together, like your philosophy of work and life was not appreciated.
It
And so
wasn't
yeah, and I feel
not
like,
at all, I would say.
like I feel like you were appreciated, but the way like you just naturally operate from this shine theory perspective, like in a way, like people who shine their light, it makes people uneasy in general. It makes people who love control and rigidity and hierarchy and
Control.
low vibe, like old school bullshit. It makes them really uncomfortable. But I think it's because it's out of fear. Truly, like I feel like it's because they're losing control. And I feel like it was like hard, like to see you with such like an honest to god easy and a beautiful type of philosophy to live, be like so like put down by like wanting to just be have everyone be amazing and everyone succeed together. It was so like odd to me, right?
It was like, "You're too nice, you're not bitchy enough, it's not gonna allow you to grow, you're not gonna get what you want from your team or your clients." Um, it and all I heard that from above. Not everyone from above, but that's where I heard it, and in fact, people thought too nice also equaled you're being fake, you're not being
Mm.
real, you're not creating an honest form of communication, and that wasn't it at all. And I think that there is a power in being nice, but extremely clear. And I think as well, your big point on control, a lot of people think there's not as much control in being kind or creating this or showing shine theory in the workplace with your teams, because you're right. It is messy because you're not the only one involved. Someone else and their personality and their thoughts and their voice are going to be there too, and that's unpredictable. But even though it's messy and when people figure it out and they realize collaboration is the goal, you get so much more. And I think I have learned recently that when you let go of control pretty much completely, that's when the good comes, because life is supposed to be a dance, a real dance of give and take, you know?
Yes. Ugh, that's my favorite way to describe things. Like it's a tango. Like when me and someone at work or in life have we know how to like we're in alignment, and we, it's like you don't need like to practice before things or whatever. I call it like we know how to tango. Like I love it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
But it takes getting there to be, it takes both people being on the same page to really get to that, because I know it has always been weird to sort of live this philosophy with people from above, but also when you have new team members or people who work for you in the technical terms, it's like, wait, but what am I allowed to do? What are the rules here? And until
Mm,
you get to that point of actually it's all on the table, let's figure this out together and just have this give take tango relationship, is when you get, there's that awkward period always consistently. Once that gets broken through, it's like, oh yeah, we're two humans with gifts and we can let each other shine. And we have enough self confidence in ourselves to not feel like that's stepping on each other's toes or to have envy or jealousy. But another note on that, though, is I don't think systems, especially in the workplace, have been created to promote that. You know what I mean? Like next promotion. Well, if I give my goods away or share that with somebody else or push that person to be better or even advocate for them, that's less for me. That's less
mm.
opportunity for me. And if I want to get to X goal by Y year, it it it's fine. That's a term win for you to push people down to get your needs met. And I'm sure that that works for some people. But what's the bigger goal? Like, are you going to be on your deathbed looking back and being like, yes, I got that promotion? Or will it be the shared moments of creation and collaboration that actually made your life even better? So,
I
yeah.
mean, like you literally, I feel like effortlessly transitioned into like one of the conversation prods that I have written down is what's like to me, like that last part is a lot about learning how to have boundaries as well as expectation, like not expectation, but it's more boundaries. It's just like I'm here to uplift you up. Like before I refined my statement was like I will help you, like don't screw me over. Like I when I was young I wasn't sure like how to like phrase it, but I was like I had an intern, he's now, we just hired him, and I was like all I want is for you to do well. And like, you know, our mutual friend at work, I won't say her name because we didn't tell her about this, but like, you know who I'm talking about. I think you know.
Yeah.
She managed me and took me under her wing, and I truly see her as a mentor, even though that wasn't the initial, like, that wasn't like the objective, but like empowering me, speaking in rooms that I'm not in, you know, driving me forward to uplift, like, by doing that, like, and she explained to me one time in a similar fashion to Shine Theory, like, when you do well, I do well, and it allows me to reach my goals because then you can reach your goals. It was like this very symbiotic relationship that was just like innate, perhaps at least what appeared to be innately in her management style. Um, and she may have learned that from like career coaching, for example, or other things. But I was like, I truly am just like people like that come along, and I have, you can probably think of them in, if you throughout your life, who've acted as this like unofficial, unintentional mentor that I think comes into your life for a reason to like help you along, like as long as you're open to it. And
Yeah.
so it's like the note I think is like, how do you like, what's the difference between, or how do you walk that fine line between uplifting people and over giving and being, having lack of boundaries per se,
I
right?
think that's a really good point, because I think there's a fine line in shine, in even the definition of shine theory, where you're like, I am secure enough in who I am in
Mm,
order to give. But givers are people who are insecure in themselves, who feel like if they give away their voice or they give away the opportunity, it takes away the attention from themselves. I think
mm,
there's the two different places. And I think what I love about the content that you put out is very much about how do you get to that place of security within yourself where you have enough to give. And I think one of the things you talk about is creating very clear boundaries for yourself and communicating and establishing those boundaries. Something that I've always loved about you is you are incredibly clear from the onset, especially in the workplace and out of the workplace, of like what works and what doesn't for you, so that nothing can be misconstrued. And even if it's something that, like in the workplace, just want to let you know I'm going to take this time to this time to myself. It's going to be consistently on my calendar at this time and this time. All the work gets done. You are amazing at your job, no doubt. I mean, it's the best. It was the best to work with you. Um,
thanks.
But even in
What an era. Sorry, I
I
had to say what. Oh, forever. Love it.
TBT. Um, but establishing that allow there to be a flexibility and a knowing and a care that you took time for yourself, and that in turn that sort of spreads to other people wanting to take self-care time for themselves. And I felt like that it just creates boundaries create a better working relationship, a better relationship altogether for people, even if it is for self-care. But
Mhm.
that's what you need to create a sense of self and a sense of confidence in order to then give it away. But I agree with you, there's a fine line between giving it all away and giving away and giving because of this sense of security. It's hard. So
Yeah, I mean, my mind is going into you're like just setting this up. You're making this so great. I love it. I feel like
yeah.
this is so good, so fun. Truly. Um, like when you talk, it's like, okay, I'm speaking of my intuition because my mind's pulling me into different conversation tracks. I think the authenticity slash confidence factor is like it's like in therapy, it's like, behavioral change. Like you have to do it, it'll feel crazy, and then the more you do it, it becomes natural. So like, I mean, I grew up in a family and we're still for the most part like this. I'm just better at engaging with them. Like they're great, love them, like no major issues, like right. But like at the end of the day, like I was conditioned to have like almost zero boundaries, or when I was like I was on a pendulum. Like either I had too many or not enough, and like I never was. I wasn't. It took me a long time to find that middle ground of like the sweet spot, because I didn't grow up with boundaries respected at all. My boundaries are for the most part still not respected. But the big change for me was like how I perceive and engage with that. Like I used
Yeah.
to get, I'm very emotional, and I've learned to like accept that as a strength, and also like, I mean, tonight's the premiere of House of Dragon. I've learned how to like, shout out to
Yeah.
HBO, not sponsored. I've learned how to befriend the dragon and like be a dragon rider. I don't know where that came from. Maybe I'm very excited for the show, but like I used to get really dramatic, super upset, and it's because like I think at the end of the day, I felt violated and I felt taken advantage of and disrespected. I mean, that's just like the blanket term for it, right? And so, but the mental shift was like, okay, like, am I gonna let family, friend, like stranger, like control the way I like react to like them not giving a fuck about me? That's a whole other fucking video. But like, I think it's so interesting to be like, when you eventually find this ground or this area where you're really confident in yourself, or at least brave enough to try to be, and be like, I'm gonna start trying this out. Like my whole thing is like I leave post-its everywhere, and I'm like, I'll have an epiphany. There's one on the door right now that says you can go to the gym at 6 a.m. at least once this week, and that's your goal. It took me 3 weeks to get up to that accomplishment, and I did it. But it's like, whether it be like saying no to something you don't want to do, like all these different things, like having the bravery to like start making the change to be like,
Saying no, totally.
no, say no before you say yes. Like ever say, be like, no, I'm gonna think about it, get back to you. Um,
You get chills even in saying, as I think a segue of shine theory is creating safe spaces for people to exist. And I feel like the workplace is often not a safe place or not created to be a safe place. You're being tested. You're being tested. Is it good enough? Are you good enough? And you're not supposed to be emotional in the workplace, right? It is not okay to cry at work in a lot of most workplaces. And I have heard that straight from the top, right? So if you're not allowed to be emotional, but your work is requiring you to use your heart in what you're creating, especially creatives and relationship builders like account people, wink, wink, nod, nod. But it's like you're not in a safe space to express that, and you get half out natural, or you feel you may do something that is right for the moment but feel conflicted about it later. And I one reason I got chills is when you create boundaries or you create a good relationship with the people you're around, all of a sudden there's this safe space for good, bad mistakes, miscommunications,
Mm. Yeah.
ideas that are off the wall, um, and I think that's really important because I don't think that there are a lot of uncontrolled safe spaces in our lives, especially when you grow up. And I share that with you of a vulnerable household that didn't respect boundaries.
Yeah. No, I think like, man, that's like the idea, like creating a safe space gets a lot of bad rap in like the boomer world and like the media. I think that's clickbait, but
Mm.
I don't know what percent. Let's say we'll go with 50-50 with millennials. And then it's really hopeful
Mm.
to see the Gen Zers embracing this notion of like, okay, like on my team, right? Like, here's how like you essentially by being vulnerable, like you create like a really good opportunity. Like essentially it's like up to you. How am I trying to think about this? You know, like when you're at a party and like there's the cake, and if it's not cut, that will never get eaten. You got to cut the cake. So I think it takes a really brave person who's like to be vulnerable, and it's even better if that's a leader, of course. But then
Yeah.
I think it helps other people then do that and then open up, and like you then. I think then the second prong is communication is your next. That's the tool that will foster a healthy like dynamic, whether it be at work or in personal life. Like you're like, okay, safe space, but like you create the safe space to communicate like the boundary or like when a boundary was crossed or like I think even better like communicate your needs and like what you want and what you're aspiring to
Yeah.
literally in any area of life. And I think it's up to the person to be like, okay, so you have to take advantage of the safe space. Like you have to be like brave enough to be like, here's what works for me. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I'm looking for out of you. It could be a friend. It could be anything. Obviously, how you word it's very different, like depending on the person. But it's like being able to like, I mean, shit, tying back to authenticity. Like, what do you even want? Like, what's not okay? Like, what makes you feel not great at work? Like, what makes you feel great at work? What makes you feel passionate and excited? And I think like the best teams I've ever worked on and the best group of friends that I have, like, it's almost like the word is not hedonism. That's like more of my just like general vibe, but like embrace each other's passions, uniqueness, and allow each other to just do their thing and have just accountability for both in personal life and work. High standards, like, you know, boundary, like, you know what I mean? Just like high
And
standards, like
curiosity. Yeah, curiosity.
curiosity, like respect, love, communication. Like, I think you can bring that open heart to work. And I mean, I'm in New York. I'm kind of, I'm using this as almost like not a guinea pig situation, but I'm truly like hyper observant in both my personal and professional life of how I'm received because I genuinely sometimes feel, and again, this like even my mind's like I can hear my ego being like, that sounds self-centered or narcissistic. So I'm like, thanks for the opinion. So like when I walk into a space or a room or interact with certain people, I can tell that I'm noticed and I can tell when my POV, my point of view, or like just the way I like literally flow through life with shine theory in mind, it either is really, it takes people off guard. It,
Yeah,
or like, what's the phrase? They're like caught off guard.
they
They're
are
caught
called.
off guard and not in a bad or a good way, but they're caught off guard because like when I was doing career coaching or receiving it, thanks for the referral, by the way. um, she was like, "You're very disarming," and I was like, "What do you mean? Like, can you like describe that?" And she's like, you have a level of vulnerability that's like really healthy, where you like are open about your wins and your flaws, and it's like this really interesting mix of that, and it just makes you seem more real, and therefore people can feel like they can like let their hair down and take their mask off, which is I think like why moving to New York has been so interesting is because people here, I mean, anywhere wear all kinds of masks, but they're more open culturally, like here to like talk to strangers and like you'll be at a bar or coffee shop and you'll talk to people. And I think it's fascinating, like at work, how you're like almost like it's not even intentional. Like you're almost mentoring people by being like, yeah, like almost like some of the things I say, I'm like, you should totally follow your heart of being an artist. And like almost like I'm like, did I just tell them to quit? And it makes me laugh because I'm like, I just want people to be like, do what you love.
Yeah, not just at work. Your hairdresser, your tattoo artist, you're like all anyone you can. If you hear them like have an inkling of I want to travel or I have a special gift, you're like, do it now.
Do it right now. No, I think that's like I'm convinced like that's I think it's a natural thing because I like people seeing excited and I'm a natural explorer and like I don't know, like slight deviation from I mean it's still in Shine Theory, but it's like I mean if you've read the Four Agreements, it's like I know you have, those who are watching. I believe it's in that book, but one of them is like the angel of death is one of the lessons that will free you from like fear. And like I've experienced that numerous times in my life. And I think that's one of the lessons where it's like you realize like you could die tomorrow or like right now when you leave the house. So like why not like live it on a lighter side of life and take things less seriously and uplift each other and support each other's passions. Like I think it's so interesting and beautiful to see how culture is shifting from the competitiveness that you mentioned. It's such a big thing with older generations because I think it's more of a survival thing and it's living out of fear. And I think once I started looking at it through that perspective, it made me look at them with kinder eyes. And I didn't even feel threatened at all because I was like, that's how they're going to be. They're operating from a like a lack mindset. Like, this is mine and I have to protect it. Whereas it's like, if you're two singers and your friend books a gig, you should be like, we need to go get a drink. Like, we need to celebrate. Like, we need
100%.
to like uplift each other and help each other. Not like proactive, let's say find our gifts, but I think it's like other people see you more clearly than you see yourself. And people will like, if you ask someone, a close friend, like, what am I amazing at? How am I perceived? You're gonna be like blown away by how amazing they think of you. And you're gonna be like, okay, that's not how I think about myself. Like,
But
why don't I think like that?
yeah. Well, you bring up, I
So
think, a really good point, like, this idea of, like, "Oh, fellow singer, you got a gig?" I think a lot of people still I think it's okay to still feel envy or jealous or something, that pang in your heart of, like, "Wow, I actually something makes me feel uncomfortable here." And I think a lot of people listening to this might be like, "Well, that's natural to feel those things. What do I do and how do I express it?" Because
mm,
from what you guys are saying, you shut that down, you push it away, and I actually think it's quite the opposite. Like, you don't have to necessarily disregard those emotions. Instead, I think something beautiful that you helped me learn was to surrender to it. Literally surrender those. Yeah, those are the emotions you have. Yeah, let them have a moment to think and feel those things. Let them go. And I think if you get in the practice of honoring but surrendering to those natural born ego like feelings, then this practice of being good to one another and lifting them up and celebrating their successes and advocating for them to get more actually becomes an easy thing. And your ego almost then will play into that. So, like, give it its time and then let it exit the building.
no, honestly, like it brings up such really awesome, just like it's like I think in the early stages, or it might be just something that, like is something that you have to like perfect throughout your entire life. Is like if the jealousy comes up, which I could definitely like, that's normal. Like that, I personally have had and still do sometimes. But being like, okay, like, hey, jealousy, what's up?
But
Um, and one of the books that I have up here, Welcome Home, like her whole thing is about like building a home you want to come or that you want to live in, like in your, it's like basically your like inner self and welcoming in the emotion like jealousy and being like, let's have tea, let's talk about it. Um, and there's so many fun ways to be like, you could even personify the jealousy like into a person. You could like with a name and you could talk to it, or you could just talk to it as yourself, like your jealous self, like, and learn about where that's coming from. And like, what I think is interesting, I think it's harder with material things, but for example, like, let's say a musician wanting a gig. I think it's like your jealousy highlights something that you want, you wish you had, obviously. So it's like, okay, in that conversation, you're like, okay, well, what's preventing me from doing the same thing? What's preventing me from like, or what small thing can I do right now, or maybe tomorrow, or whatever? Realistic goal, maybe this week,
Yeah.
to like get one teeny tiny step closer to like nailing a gig. Um,
Yeah.
and then being like, okay, jealousy, like they're all in the attic. They're all the fun feelings are still up there, but like being able to like talk to it and not reject it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I
A
mean,
part of you.
just knowing that those are a part of you and treating them like integration, right? Like being like, yeah, I am working with my jealousy, like I'm working with it versus like trying to get rid of it. Um, and I could not even begin to tell you what quote or who wrote it. It's one of the million accounts I follow or in the books I read. But it was like talking about how like in your shadow, like jealousy, that's often where your greatest gifts are hiding,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so like with shine theory, it's like what comes to mind just now is like someone who might not be used to being treated in that way, in such a positive, uplifting way. That shine theory might be building their runway for like attaining their life's greatness, like
Oh,
building,
man.
fertilizing that garden, and you don't even know it. And you're like, okay, bye. And you like never work together again or never see each other at the same bar again. And you just like actually truly laid the foundation for them to finally like get up and do or whatever, or get up and be.
I mean, that's what's wild, and, like, it blows me away even when you talk about these responses that, you personify, which I think is so cool because and then something like shine theory actually leading you to your higher self, because I remember when somebody told me that, like, pain is actually a signal. So, like, when you experience pain, a headache, or whatever, it's actually a signal that something's happening with your body, you're sick or whatever. And I think that happens with heart pain too, of like jealousy or envy or anger or whatever, is it's actually a signal for something triggering you in you that isn't right. And to your point, it's like, can shine theory and you actually giving a part of yourself and then the sort of reaction of yourself when you're seeing that, seeing somebody thrive, can that actually lead to self discovery and piecing that apart or writing about it? And all of a sudden, like you're solving or being kind to a pain that was a signal for something
Mhm.
that has been buried within you for years, if not generations. So it's like actually being kind to others and lifting the others up can lead to a benefit of discovery in yourself. Like that is mind blowing to me.
No, honestly, like, and even though like we're obviously not like medical professionals, but if you think about that, that's my YouTube disclaimer. um, but I like, people like I think her name Dr. Nicole Perla. She's like the holistic psychologist, and like Louise Hay and all these people. They are. I think Nicole Perla is like one of the, at least for me, like in my who I'm reading about is the best. Is she believes about like this integrated psychology where it's not always like um, some physical issue. It's actually tends to be an emotional issue that has been buried into the nervous system.
Yeah.
Whole other topic, but
Uh,
I think it's fascinating to think about, like to watch. I mean, when I was like, I'd say leading up to my like rock bottom moment of like relationship issues, family issues, everything. I think at the time, work was the only thing going well for me, and I still had interpersonal issues with certain people. But for the most part, I felt like the life I'd built, like literally fell apart, and I was like distraught and so confused and disoriented.
yeah.
Like up until that point, my like blood work was off the charts. And I, by the way, I eat, me, I eat like a rabbit. I eat so for the most part healthy. On weekends, I have my quesadillas and all my junk. But, I work out, but I was like 20 pounds overweight. My liver enzymes were off the charts. I had anxiety, eczema. My whole body was like, fuck this. And within literally 6 months of doing like just like inner work and then kind of welcoming back that person, because I used to live there again, pendulum. I used to be like a Shine Theory person. I think I still did, but because of like the things I had in my life and the people I was choosing,
The
relationship
people,
wise,
the people.
people were like stealing my soul and like stealing my light, but I was giving it away. I realized I wasn't like, I didn't have a good enough safety box on that shit. Um, and within 6 months, let's say a year, just for ease, because COVID, I always forget. I'm like, when was that? Um, the same exact blood work with minimal changes, and like I was still active. I didn't do anything drastically different. My blood work was like I had like gotten 10 years younger and was fully, my doctor was like, whatever you're doing, like keep doing it. And all I was doing was emotional work and psychological work.
Wow.
I like, and that for me was proof in the pudding. For example, like it, like you could even look at me in photos and be like transformed.
I
Like,
mean,
it's
I
wild.
knew then. Like I knew you
Yeah.
at a certain point. I mean, I think we're talking about the same time, but like I knew
Oh
you,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the difference between then and now of your contentment and happiness with self, your relationships with the people around you, how successful you've been at work, self investment. I mean, it is off the charts different. And like, you're someone I love, right? I love you so much as my dear, dear friend. And like, I want to see you healthy and happy and in your best self. But what I appreciate from where I sit is you're doing the work to do
Mm.
that. And that's on a daily basis in the small moments and in the big moments, in the quiet moments, in the loud moments, in the intuitive moments. I mean, it's just to see you being truly yourself with the gifts that you've been given and not putting weight on the things that drag you down. It's so cool to see because it's like there's no other Matt Confer in the entire world. So
Um, no, I
yeah,
appreciate it. It's always, it shouldn't be weird to hear someone like talk about you in such a great way, but it's just like I'm so grateful for, like, I feel seen. You make me feel seen, which I think is like Shine Theory is like all about. Is like, I mean, no pun intended, but like shining the light on people and being like, you can just like, let's do this together. Um, and like integration, like accepting like have flaws and you probably always will. No one's perfect. But like, um, people are often like, even with like, what kind of, like, what do I want to do for work, or like all these different things, like decisions, like big, not big, but things that, change the course of your life. I'm always like, okay, yeah, well, like, it doesn't, like, you actually have to put like effort into it. You have to get the books, you have to start journaling. There's like a lot of work. Or even if you don't do anything, you have to sit and stare off into space in a park or wherever and think about your life and what you want. And that shit can change. That's fine. But like, I feel like people are like, what's the trick? And I'm like 4 to 5 years of intense introspection.
yeah, and a community of people, surrounding yourself with people who advocate for that for you. And I think what's so interesting about Anne and Aminatou definition, like they're really focused within Shine Theory on it being in friendships, not just in the workplace. For me, I
Yep.
felt like the workplace was the best place for it. And their focus is really on like having a few relationships where you double down and you do this in.
Mhm.
For me, I think that there needs to be a Shine Theory light in everything you do authentically. But like to your point, doing that intense self work and having the few people in your life that really do know you to that core and know that journey and push you, I think that makes it all the sweeter and better because it's hard being alone to do it by yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, part of, not that I ever felt alone in terms of friends. I mean, like, I think you coming into my life was such like a divine timing, honestly, because I have very, very close. I'm very much a small circle. I know a lot of people. I'm very friendly, but like close, deep, intimate friendships, like very small crew. And they're all very much like high quality ride or die. But we've talked about this, like different chapters in our lives have different like styles of friendship, and they're all beautiful and they serve you in different ways. But I think what's was beautiful to have you in my life, and then what's fascinating is once I started truly being open to being vulnerable with people, new people were entering my life organically that were of the same like vibration, if you were. of the same vibe to who were just as vulnerable and into like, I only have friends that I uplift. I only have friends that are quality. I am here for you. All those good things. Like it was like a mind fuck basically.
Right.
And like just being like, okay, I am not alone because I can actually talk about this stuff instead of only with my therapist or for those people. I mean, it was hard to find a good therapist and it's expensive as hell. So for
Yeah.
people who don't have them, your friendships are like
Mm.
super essential. Like, and
Essentials.
breaking the ice and being vulnerable. And like, I think also like in friendships and romantic or whatever, like my whole thing is balance, but like there's this great quote. It's like there's different times where you have to be the uplifter and then or more than the other. And like it shouldn't stay this way for like a ridiculous amount of time, but it
Yeah.
should like, and I think that's so beautiful. And like I think with friendships, like when I look back at the friends I've had for like since college, and then I have two or three that I've known since like elementary school, like one of them was just saying how I don't know, like she wrote me, I think it was she wrote me a note like when I moved to New York, and she just like referenced like us going starting a new chapter together. Like it was really sweet to be like these people accept you and help you and instead of like shunning you or whatever. Basically, they accept you for who you are as a whole, and they help you along the way from an uplifting perspective. Because the really good ones never make you feel bad for having a flaw or for being whatever it is, like figuring like overly egoic or whatever. They like no, they see like the you that's amazing, and then they're like, like they'll figure it out. And some don't, and then maybe you don't talk anymore. But like I think that's like the community factor is like
Yeah.
so not underappreciated, but it's like it's essential. Like it's essential for like I think Shine Theory is a movement and is like truly to a concept that changes the world and is currently and will change the world
Yeah.
is just like uplifting one another, even if they're strangers. Strangers.
I know. But it doesn't feel authentic. I know I have specific people in mind who feel like Shine Theory is probably really foreign to them, because it doesn't feel authentic. And I think it doesn't feel authentic because we as human beings are born with the right of discerning where we need to that where we have a lot of judgment. And I could very well see a personality type in the workplace or out who seems flawed because we're two different puzzle pieces that don't match on areas or whatnot, and I judge those things. But what I feel like is when I relinquish control and realize that people are dynamic, and I'm more curious about where they're different rather than judging where they're different based on my preconceived notion, the more I actually find a friendship there. Like there are people who at the beginning seem so awkward, or people have said like they don't have good social skills or whatever, and like I remember a ton of people I work with who are like that, and then all of a sudden when I go at it just through experience with them, removing that bias, all of a sudden these are people who are like the gems, the
Mm,
people I didn't expect, who then become advocates of me, and it's like they feel seen, whereas maybe that was a barrier for them before. And I know for myself, I've felt that people think I'm too nice, they think it's fake, they think that there's not a realness with me, or they have a hard time feeling like there's something to grab onto.
mm.
But when they move past that and just have sit down conversations, and I often go deep with people. I'm like, tell me your life story in the first 5 minutes. Um, there's
Tell
a
me
reason
about your trauma.
why, but I know that what I'm trying to say is that I think that's foreign and inauthentic for a lot of people. But when you relinquish control and you look past the initial biases that you have, I think that's when you get to know someone. And I think to your point on friendships on that level, give and like you're not going to match with everyone. That's the whole point of
Yeah.
the and die crew. But when you don't judge your friends and your friends have a balance of give and take, because you've had the friends who are takers, um, when you find those that create that balance, like that's that's where you really can start getting comfortable with it being beyond sort of your own bias, your own assumptions, and just living what shine theory is intended to be.
Like so what's interesting is it's like people who are thrown by, like, let's say your presence and
Oh
your
yeah,
authenticity, um, they they are not used to the idea of someone not wanting something from you. They think that, like, you're being nice because there's a reason.
wow, yeah.
There's a
I
motive, there's a minute, like, there's something. Like, I think that's in that for me, I don't think I was in that state too much into my late 20s, but there for sure I was there where it's like I was not, I'll just say the word defensive, just because it's like your walls were up and you're like, well, what do they want from me? Why are
yeah,
they being so nice? And you're like, they're just being nice. Like, um, and not needing a reason for everything, honestly, in life, just be like, well, they're just nice. Like that was your interaction. Like, what's the problem with that?
yeah. But you don't have to be nice to be able to be an advocate of shine theory.
Yeah,
Like
I
even
think
if you're known, yeah, even if you're known as a biatch, let's say, like having those few people that you invest in or start like practicing advocacy for, room to grow, putting your faults aside, like the more that you sort of succumb to that part of yourself, the more actually I think it there's that mutual growth and investment that happens.
you like again. You're like, I'm like, are you reading my notes? I'm just kidding. Like for real though, shine theory. So it's really important for people to develop like a healthy ego, especially I think in anywhere. Like somebody gave me this advice that said like you need to be. He was basically implying that I was like too couching myself too a little bit too much. I'm very confident out there, but it was so subtle, and I appreciated the feedback. And it was he basically was like, especially in a city like Los Angeles or New York, like you need to be able to stand up for yourself and have presence. You don't need to be doing anything, but it's basically like you need to be stand in your power, basically.
Mhm.
And I think to your point about it's not always about being kind. I think shine theory is about also about having difficult conversations and
Mhm.
honest and being like, I don't know, like the way, and oftentimes like it comes with the territory of following your intuition, which you taught me so much about. Um, is knowing when it feels appropriate, and again, not needing a reason, but you just know like this is when I need to say this, and you can have maybe like a really say something kind of like what might be perceived as critical. And I think it also you learn over time how to say it in a way that is uplifting versus like you're to this. Be like, I noticed that like whatever. I don't know how to say it right now, but like,
And I'll help because like a account
yeah,
person,
yeah. Tell
right? You're
me.
like have the same goal of X. I know we
Mm,
both want to get there in this way. Here's what I need, or here's what needs to exist for that to happen, or here's some ideas I have for that to happen together. But I like if you start at a point of we're in it together, then the things that can be critical or I have feedback for you, but here is where we both want to go. Like it can happen under the couch of actually we're on the same canoe. And I also think that if you're giving, I think feedback is giving direct feedback can be very challenging, but I think also the sandwich mentality of like, okay, good, bad, good, right? Like, here are the things that I think you rock that help make us better this, and this way. Where you're struggling, in order to get there, there's tools that you may not have yet. And this is what we need to work on. But if you had those tools, imagine being able to do X, Y, and Z. And
yeah.
actually more than anyone I see have potential to do that. Like I think couching it on I'm your side, I'm on your
Yeah.
side, we're in it together, like matters so much. It changes all the dynamics
I mean, even
everywhere.
like, it's so true. And like, even just talking to a friend just a couple weeks ago, an equally amazing friend from college, about like relationships and stuff. It's like, I'm like, I like friends who are like the hype squad, like when, especially when it's authentic and like obviously authentic, but they know when it's like needed. Friends who are that close, you can kind of tell. Where I
Yeah.
was like, girl, like you, and people can say this all they want, but when you say it in a way that is like super personal to them, I'm like, you're this, and this. You're amazing. You're this, and this, and this. Like you, and then like me, I was like, I got to be honest with you though. I think you wait far too long to start asking what you want or basically communicating your needs or what you're not getting and having a firm line of like, I'm not going to date someone for a year before I like pull the like, no, like you need to have like a gut check at 3 months. Like you're giving too much of yourself for too long. You're basically like going like this. And I was like, if you really are honest with yourself, like when did you first notice those red flags? And she's like the first month. And me as a friend, I'm like, I want you. And truly, I was like, you're gonna crash into the love of your life, and you're not even gonna expect it. And it's gonna change your life, and you're gonna be two amazing people together because you want to be and uplift each other. And right now, though, I'm like, you know, it basically was like that was the hard talk, but it was like fueled with love and heart and sincerity, with the end goal of being like, I want you to like never have annoying relationship again because I know how much you want to be happy and like all that stuff, or whatever. Happiness should come from within, but you guys get what I'm saying.
I mean, that's the thing that, like, whenever we do polos, sometimes I listen to yours and I'm like, because we always talk about larger philosophies and our own personal lives and where we're at in our seasons. And like, sometimes I'll ask you an opinion and you'll come back and you'll say it in a way that is so loving, but is so straightforward and not offensive at all. And it's like, I don't know a lot of people who can walk that line, to be honest. But sometimes I'm like, oh, like I get exactly what you're saying, but that's an interesting way to like. That's an interesting, loving way to say it, while still being direct. It's somebody who's so good at communicating. Like, anyway, I just wanted to shout out to you for being so good at always being the way you said it right now. Like asking a question. Do you think that da 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 da? It it gives me an opening to join you and to feel heard while being pushed. It's been really cool.
I appreciate the feedback, but also I've pissed off a lot of people throughout my life,
Yeah.
learning how to figure out how to say that shit. It's not just pissing people off. I feel like it's like people who don't know how to receive something like that, which I equally was a total victim of not knowing how to receive any kind of feedback because I thought I was perfect for a long time.
Mhm.
And just learning how to be like, and you talk about this all the time, like the people who are meant to be in your life are going to be in your life. And if uplifting, helpful feedback that's truly delivered with like as best as you can communicate in the present moment, like the skills you have are the skills you have in communicating, but with heart and with vulnerability and with like uplifting intention, like that's all you can do. And again, intuitively knowing like, is this something that I need to share right now? Have I been asked for this? And then also like sometimes I'll generally be like,
Wow, yeah.
would you like some unsolicited advice? And
Yeah.
that's my joke. I think I do. I add humor is my secret trick, I think, because it's a playfulness and I'm like, would you like some unsolicited feedback? If not, no worries.
I love that, like, asking that first. I mean, most people say yes, but give you unsolicited advice, it just comes off as annoying.
For feedback. I think I
Feedback.
learned it from a meeting or a movie. It was a ridiculous movie, and it was like, "Can I offer you some feedback?" And I laughed my ass off, but it was so much of a safer way to do that. And I don't do that with everyone. It's very rare.
Yeah.
It's with close friends, or like, let's say a meeting didn't go well, or interact or something. I'd be like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's intuitive, and it's like when you feel honestly like called to do it.
You know,
But
something you say that is because I feel like I was in a kind of whole new universe last year, when my oldest started going to school, and all of a sudden you're in the presence of a lot of new people, a lot of new
mm,
parents, a lot of new moms. So you're having to create a community from scratch in a new area based on the fact that your child is in the same class. And, I think it's very hard to do shine theory in a full group of full strangers without having like someone else that you already know as sort of the gateway. And so what I found myself doing is being genuine Chelsea, genuine shine theory to new people. And some of them didn't shine back. Some of them are like, one, and like would just look and stare and or potentially not wave back or, wave back awkward. Like and allowing that to be what it is, but being consistent, like you
Mm.
giving feedback. Like you're always consistent. Like I have seen you for quite some time. Like you're never you're never inconsistent basically. But if I'm consistently every day being the same person to these same parents, all of a sudden the people who really do respond to that, I have a great community a year later with some wonderful moms and dads who equally shine, are just good people to the core. And the ones who don't meet that, like that's totally okay. We're just on different planes. You act in your life, there's no judgment, I act in mine. But if there's no meeting place, if there's no like allowance or
Mhm.
permission to join one another, to be able to give and take, then that is what it is. And you sort of just let it go.
I mean, I can't imagine. Like, I don't have kids. All my friends, for the not all, but a lot of them
A
do.
lot, yeah.
All the same similar ages, Um, going and you talked about. I remember when it happened. Like, it was like high school all over again. And as much of a shining beacon of authenticity as you are, you're like it's a whole new, not test, but it's a whole new thing. Like, all right, like now I gotta actually walk the walk. It kind of like throws you off balance. It's like, I don't know what it is. Like, I didn't experience it, but like I remember you talking about how like, oh my god, I feel like this is so weird. And then you kind of were just like, you know what? I'm just gonna do me. I call it just I say just float around. Sounds passive, but it's kind. I just picture, like, we talk about a lot about waves in the ocean because we both grew up in Southern California. Like, I just float around, I just vibe, I do my thing, and I'm very much like a. I rarely will chase. It's like it's hard to describe to people who aren't familiar, so I won't go too into it. But I channel. I'm a magnet. I attract what I
Mhm.
essentially am getting in life, and I rarely will full on hardcore go pursue someone or something. I wait for the organic moments that feel like totally right. And like, I remember you saying, like, I don't know, like, there were many days where you just were like, I didn't talk to anyone, like, or I didn't make any friends. And we both were like, all right, we got to be patient with ourselves and be kind to ourselves. Like, these things take time,
Oh my
and the
god.
right people who are equally shining, they're probably scoping you out too. Like, I'm very outgoing, but I'm a Virgo, like hardcore. I scope out the scene, I get the lay of the land, and then I do my own thing still, but I go in typically without expectations. And I've learned how to do that, to be like, my only expectation today is to have a great time at this party, open myself to quality interactions or not. Some nights I might say, no, I don't want to actually interact with people. I just want to dance alone all night long and go home and rest and just like let that steam out. But just knowing, like, I'm just gonna, as best that I can, do me.
Yeah.
Like, and it like changed everything, I feel like. And you were like, this isn't so bad.
Oh my god, but you reiterated that to me over and over again, but you have this cool finesse about you where you're like, "This is me, and I'm gonna go in and like you mentioned, organic opportunities that come up will come up, and then that's when you engage." I am a weirdo, and I'm so proud of it. I'm like I kind of overdo, so I'm like, "Hi," and I remember this one really embarrassing moment, no one remembers except me, where this group of moms, like all of a sudden, for some reason, all the moms were talking to one another in this group. And I come in and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do the math thing where I'm like just playing a cool and I'm going to go and like pick up Aria and leave and wave. And one of the moms said, "Hey, Chelsea, come here." And it was a mom that I knew a little well, but I didn't know she said it. I thought this other mom said it. So I walked up to that mom and I gave her a hug. Didn't just say hello. I said, "Oh, hi, so good to see you." Gave her a hug. That wasn't the mom who shouted out to me. It was someone else. So then I like go, I realized that halfway through and I start giving everyone hugs. And it was like,
Yeah. Stop. You would. Oh my God. That's so good.
it was like, you know what?
But that, I
That's
feel
so
like
weird,
that's
but
like,
whatever.
like talk about going with the flow. Like I also, it's like we should do a video on that because it's like that funny. Okay. Also, to have a good life, in my opinion, you need to literally have a great sense of humor and just like laugh at
Yes.
everything. That to me is the funniest thing ever because you're like, it reminded me of that meme where like the girl waves at a guy and he's not waving at her. So then she gets into a cab that stopped and it's like a joke. Like she just like, whereas you're like, you then like flowed with it and you're like, whatever.
Everyone's gonna get in here. Yeah, it was so. It, but yeah, I'm so with you. Like I have embarrassing moments like that all the time, and I sort of am the person who like trips and then starts to dance, and you're like, "What are you doing?" You were like, "What are you? Who are you?"
No, I
Yeah.
like everyone I think is quirky. Like I think we're both okay. Again, perhaps it's me learning not to like couch. We're very cool. I think everyone's cool. If you once embrace the coolest people are people who express themselves, who know what they want, who are just like have such a solid sense of self. And
Yes.
like fly your freak flag high. Like if you like I got over the embarrassment, the feeling of being embarrassed by any like tripping over shit or just that general kind of insecurity. Like it happens here and there, but it's really rare. Like at least I catch it quickly and I'm like, okay, like uh you just like you're like honestly no one's looking at you and if they
No,
are they're not the type of person that you want to hang out with if they're making fun of you
100%.
for something stupid. um or like even like your bravery. I'm not bravery is probably the wrong word, but like your sense of fashion's like phenom. And what people love about you, many things, but they love that you are so open to trying things. And you're super open. You're like, yeah, that one didn't work for me. Like I
Yeah.
remember you wore some like I don't remember. It was like a
Huge dress.
really
Yeah.
cute peasant. It was a like a Marie Antoinette peasant type thing, and you're like, it's just not working. And I can't remember why. You just were like, and you wore it.
But
By
I
the way,
rented it. It's gonna be worn. Yeah.
yeah, and it was like 100 degrees, and I was like, "What do you do?" But you're
But
like,
that's
"Well, I don't know.
funny.
I tried it, and I love that." Like, and you're like, and you committed to it for the day. You're like, "Well, this is what I'm wearing." No
I mean,
sense
that's the
about
thing
it.
with parent drop off is like I can't wear sweats in public. And I respect people who do. Like, good for
Yeah,
you. It's not my vibe. So
but it's your
like
jam.
I'll wear beautiful outfits for drop and heels for drop off. And you see like and you strut in there. You're just like, yeah, girl, this is what I'm wearing. And people and the other people are like, does she work? Where's she going? And in the and if you feel like your presence is an inconvenience, people can read that.
Yes,
But when you're like, sorry, like I can't, and this is how I feel about things like that, and you do as well, I can't help being who I am and doing what I love. So
yeah.
you're gonna have to get used to seeing me dolled up for kid pickup because that's what I want to be. That's how I want to feel.
And like honestly, like right now, I mean, especially like leaving, let's say, or I guess going into year 2 of COVID, like quarantine, like going to the supermarket was our only form of doing anything. So even kid pickup, like you've got so much on your plate, you're like, yeah, this is my outing for like the next 2 hours. Like, and it's like, whatever. So
The crossing guard would give me the compliments, and I was like, every day I lived for that compliment. I was like, oh, this is so sad. I need to get out more. But anyway,
we
yes,
all do. But
yeah,
I love that we tell it. We're like, you should get out.
no, get out. It's getting a
Um,
little sad. It's okay. No, but when you have the friends around you, whether it's your neighbors or people you're seeing in person or not, and they're like, we love that side of you. Like
people
you
can people can truly sense like when people uplift you like or like they like give you that oh my god like what's going on like in a good way like they are truly sensing your authentic presence because when you're being authentic you truly radiate you as in collective like radiate a very unique energy that is like truly like sensed by people whether people are into energetics or not humans as people can sense it. um and it's like I mean I'm very into vampires so in my mind it's like this scene where this like you're just like walking and like flowing and the world's flowing around you like that's when you're like in true alignment like me I don't know I don't leave the house. I love doing my hair. My hair is like my thing.
So
Yeah,
good.
put a cap on it. Like, that's fine. I don't leave my house wearing my glasses. I don't like wearing glasses because they make me feel boxed in and I'm gonna get hit by a car. So like
Really?
I have my reasons. But I feel um anywho, so we're almost at the I think we're at the hour, but I have two last questions that I think will be beautiful. And again, it segued perfectly. Um one would be like resilience. Like I think this is a big one. Like
Really?
I feel like and I almost had this in the beginning, but it didn't like fit in. So this is actually perfect. Like from my experience, it can sometimes or often feel very draining being the uplifter, being in this way of life when you're in a group, a meeting, a company, or even just greater society or culture where like let's say oftentimes and maybe it's you being like the universe testing you to maintain that, but like sometimes it's very draining and very lonely when you're like the only one shining, let's say, and making, even when you're, let's say, not feeling it, but you intentionally go out into the world and be like, I'm going to be nothing but nice and uplifting and just like me, even though I may not be having a great day, but choosing to just shine, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that, I was like, was that a question? But
No,
was
but I get it.
like, how do you keep at
Maintain the energy on it. Yeah.
Yeah, like, what do you like, what's yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, as nice as I feel like I am, I also, for people who drain me, I'm very quick to move them into a back row. Not
Mm,
completely out if it's really unproductive or hurtful. Like people come in and out of my life and then they stay out if they're pretty bad.
yeah,
But if I feel like I'm always the uplifter, I spend less and less time on it. And even when they come to me, I meet the energy and I let it go. And so I don't try to give it all to those that are more like a well. In addition, sometimes some people would say like energy comes from self care. And I completely agree with that in part. But I also think energy comes from advocated space. Like if you feel drained, literally plan to do nothing. Like, doesn't it can like just create the space for your brain and your mind and your intuition to have a voice, to have a say, to let you know what it needs. Because I think if you don't know what you need, but you're feeling drained, like that's the key of the problem. Like, what do you think?
no, for real. I mean, again, like, intuition, like you even though, let's say, at periods you don't think, like, you might be and I think we all go in these waves of again, waves, flow, of feeling highly connected and maybe disconnected, but, like, you're at a state, in my opinion, where you then are aware of it. The stressful part is then, in my opinion, being like, okay, so like, why are we disconnected? Like, what
Why?
do we do? Like, what's because you and I are not about um fixing the symptom. We're like, no, no, no. We for step one is identifying the cause and then really addressing it. And it's not like overnight. Like, again, we are not perfect. Some of these addresses take months, if not more. Some are
Yeah.
easy fixes and they're like a week or even a day. But like to your point about like being hyper aware of like honestly, I think it's like what comes to my mind is just like being aware of like what feels good. So like people, if you're on people that feel draining, unless they're paying your bills, don't. And then even if you are like if your work is draining you, you need to figure out like an exit plan. But like just like knowing like certain activities, people, and things who don't feel that great, and you feel just both fatigued or emotionally drained. Um, then having the integrity to yourself to like to your point, they don't like put you could cut them out of your life, that's fine. But having knowing like where you your boundary, like you've put them into like this area. Like my whole thing is like I started this entire self expansion journey with the goal of how I was so off balance in like literally every area of my life. Like it was like insane. I mean, I knew how to have fun. That was like my,
You were
saving
still
grace.
good. Yeah, you were still a great person. It's just the balance. You're right.
Yeah, it was me being like balance. And you said it so perfectly. It's like, I refuse to have friends that don't, there's no balance. I refuse to date people or even go on, like, be around people where there's not a give and take, like a healthy. It's not like every interaction is like, did I get something out of that? You're like, no, I think it's like you look at it holistically
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, like, and let's say if you do feel off balance, it's like, let's say one of your good friends isn't texting you or something, and you're like, being, again, communication, being like, hey, is everything okay? Sometimes that person actually might need someone to reach out, but otherwise, it's like, if you're like, I don't know, like, you need to be aware of when things need to be let go, or when things aren't serving you anymore, or they're reinforcing habits that you're trying to get rid of or have gotten rid of and are now visiting to be like, oh, did you really get rid of that? um I think just knowing like what's working for me, is this helping me in my present day for my future self? Like, would my future self be like keen on this interaction?
I
uh
mean, to that point, like seeing your life as seasons. So like
oh,
almost
yeah, yeah.
seeing it be like, okay, for this season, whether you call it fall or, just feel like a few months, like for this season, I kind of just need a break. I need a break from that person or from work or what, not for a few months, but like, you know what I mean? Is
Yeah, yeah.
creating creating the space to let it be what it is, or to remove yourself from what it is. Either of those things are productive, even if they seem counterintuitive.
Oh, for real. Like, I think, and you know this, like, I think like, I'm learning how, like, I'm very good at, like, when I'm having fun or resting, I'm very good at dividing the spaces and be like, no, 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 we're having fun, or no, 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 we're resting. But when rest becomes so prolonged, like in June and July, where I just was like, why am I so fatigued? And you were like, just lean into it, like, lean it, rest, like, you just, your body, I love, you're very much about your body's telling you something.
Yeah.
And me, like, I'm a doer, but it's not just that, like, it's not like I'm doing a pun, like, I'm like, I'd rather be at the park doing nothing, quote unquote, but truly being like, no, you need to just like disconnect your devices and lay in bed and nap all day long, or maybe go and read, or you know what I mean, like. And I finally, at least in my opinion, which is, we've talked about this podcast for so long, and I'm glad that I finally, in my opinion, it's courage. I finally got the courage to be like, let's do this. So I appreciate you so much for agreeing to do it. But I was like, I realized, I was like, and we'll see over the next month or two, but I think my epiphany was, I'm not creating, I'm just working at my job. Like, I give you things, you give me money situation. And I'm very invested in my job. You know this, my current career. Um, but I was like, I'm not creating in the sense of like putting out what I feel is uplifting things into the world, whether it be like, I don't paint, but like, I do it sometimes for fun, but it's just like creating, like, and so this is like one manifest, or like cooking videos, for example. Um, that was something that I realized was like, actually, I'm not doing a whole lot of that since moving here. Um, so that might be, and my energy is very much back. We are approaching Virgo season very soon. So that every time a birthday rolls around, we both are the same. This energy is channeled from who knows where, and we're like reborn again. Um, but I think my last question, and then we'll
Oh, wait,
sign.
actually, not one thing I wanted to do to caveat
Yeah.
on that.
Yes,
So
yes. Of
you've been
course.
talking about podcasts for quite some time. And then I was on 4th of July, this guy was like, oh, your voice is so soothing. You should do a podcast. And I was like, is it? Is it soothing? And so then I like actually answered you and I was like, okay, like, yeah, we can pull the trigger on this. And the moment we actually scheduled it on the calendar, then somebody reached out to me to do this very creative, whimsical photo shoot. I ran into a dad like, hey, I'm having a gig next Thursday. Come in and like sub in and sing. This girl,
Oh,
she's starting her business. She's like, I'd really like you to boss me around at the photo shoot. Like the creative thing, like you turn on the phone and it goes, if it's to be, it opens up that way. I love creativity and creating and everything. And so even though
wow.
this made me very nervous because I feel like a lot of the things we're talking about are very personal, and personal growth is something I feel like I don't want to be misconstrued as a as a guru or as somebody who thinks she knows everything, like, but to share in it with a friend who's as well versed in our own lives in this kind of thing, and helping to lift people up, like, yeah, 100%, like, let's get into it. And the moment, like, we were bold enough to make that, I think, like, more things come along. Like, it's just mind boggling to me. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but like,
No, no,
it's a
no.
big deal
Like,
for me too.
and I think from a podcast, we're still learning how to tango.
Yeah.
It's like I remember getting that polo from you, and you were like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it, and you'll never guess what happened." And you told me about the guy mentioning podcasts, and I was like, "Shut the fuck up!" I was like, "What?" Like that to me is like if synchronicity to the max. That is like your guides being like, "You got to do this." Like, and I'm so grateful that you did it because honestly, like at the end of the day, like to your point, like I think I think you should follow many, many, many people who put out amazing things that uplift you and educate you. But I do not believe in like a one figurehead guru type person. I think it's unhealthy and weird. But and again, like I see us as these podcasts is like this current one, let's say, is just two friends. This is what we talk, two friends talking about just something we are passionate about. Because for those watching, like we talk, this is what our Marco Polos are usually about. They tend to be maybe triggered by something that we're going through in life. But the idea was spawned from what if we did this like and put it on YouTube? Like, wouldn't that be great? And so I think it's like so awesome. And like at the end of the day, like I want these to be like conversations with people, whether I know them. I've got my list of people for the people to like get content out.
Yeah.
But if I meet someone super interesting in out in the city or even traveling abroad, like, and we have, because I have these, like, you know it, I'll be at a bar or a coffee shop and I'll just very organically, like, usually it's them. It depends. You know what I mean? When it organically conversation happens, I don't like go after it. And then I had this like mind blowing conversation, and I'm like, that was so weirdly relevant to my life, or just something. And then I end up buying a book on it or something. I want to be like, hey, so I have this podcast. Like, would you want to just like recreate this combo and go even deeper? Um, and just invite random people. And like, I think this, at least for me, I feel fulfilled just like after this 1 hour of just like
Me too.
cerebral, amazing conversation. So so thank you because like this is like a we're just trying things out. Like this is just what we're doing.
It's fun.
So it's like we're not pros yet, but we're planting those seeds. Like why not? Um, you know,
Yet. Oh, just
yeah, exactly. We're not professionals yet. As much as we do in our careers from our experience, we know how to do this. But it's weird when it's us doing it. You know what I mean?
I totally
In front of the camera versus behind the camera. And I think the last thing is honestly like, and I think we had a lot of this throughout the video, but like, what like, ad, what key takeaway? How do I want to say this? What advice do you have for people out there who are like, they're on this cusp of like, I want something better for myself, for my life. Like, how do they like start doing the shine theory thing? Like, like, what advice do we have?
I mean, if the starting place for shine theory is self security, I think it's taking the time to really understand yourself, where you stand, how you work, what triggers you, what the source of those triggers are, and getting to a place of liking yourself and understanding yourself and what your need states are and what you like. And when you get to that point, and only when you get to that point, I think then you embark in shine theory, because that's when you can really give it away without feeling like you're giving away from an empty pot. Um, you have to be fair and kind to yourself in that process. And I think that that takes time and space. But beyond that, once you, if you have a community around you after you're kind of embarking on a journey, if you surround yourself by good people, and then you extend yourself in a way that is curious about others and lifts each other up and celebrates their successes and wants to understand their goals and push them towards those goals. I think that's when you're really practicing shine theory. And to your point earlier, that doesn't happen overnight. And I think it's okay and not putting pressure on yourself for everything to happen. Take baby steps in each of those areas. It doesn't even have to be linear. When you meet a friend, are they someone who benefits you or not? When you are in front of somebody who is working for you or you're working for, and you feel a tension of hierarchy, question it and just try to understand why you are feeling the way you feel and extend kind of a new approach to it. Ask what some goals are. Be curious
Mm.
on why they're not achieving it right now. Like the little steps that you can take get you to your goal in the long run, but it's not about getting to the goal, it's about the journey. And so the more you relinquish control and you just sort of live it with the hopes of becoming a better version of yourself and getting people to be better versions of themselves, and I think you're ultimately going to get there. But
Ugh, so beautiful. Like, honestly, so well said. I think the only thing I will layer on is like, truly, I'm like, yep, that's it. Like, I think to start it today, let's say, or tomorrow,
mm,
is like something tangible, let's say, or what do you call it? Like an action item.
accountability.
Yeah, accountability. So like starting with yourself, being like literally like as digital as we are when we write things on the computers, it's totally fine. Especially according to my therapist, like at least get it out. But I'm like, when you write it on paper, it grounds it in this reality truly. So like write yourself a note and be like, I'm going, like, no matter what's going on, I'm going to choose to be like I'm going to uplift today or whatever. And I think the action is like, and it takes a lot of practice and it's not overnight again, but creating that space between like when something happens or when you're about to respond to something, you're like, how am I going to respond to this? Am I going to respond to it like I have been? Or am I going to respond to how can I respond in a way that reflects shine theory?
Yeah.
How can I like, and then you might only have like one or none of those in the day or the week, but your mind is now active in trying to like, it's reprogramming itself. Like, and eventually you're going to be like, oh my God, I responded to that in such a different way. And wow, like, oh my
Oh,
God, like what?
so true.
And then
So
over time, it's like automatic. And it's like, it happens, I think, quicker than people realize because they're then one day you'll wake up truly and you'll be like, it will literally click in your mind that like your life has shifted into a better place. And it just like clicks, it's like when you work out and you're like, you don't really notice like and there's, I think it's like 6 months in or something. You know what I mean? Like, whereas you'll wake up one day and you'll be like, huh, weird. Like you really like have noticed, like you're like, this is wild. And you're like in a totally different reality and it's because of your continued effort in these baby steps towards like being a uplifter versus someone who's doing the opposite.
what's crazy when you said that that came to mind is I used to be so hard on myself, right? Like I noticed I would rethink about what I said to somebody. I would say I need to do something better. I'd push to perfectionism, which is a conversation we have had multiple times. And how I know I'm different is because that voice has gotten quieter and quieter. And I'm like, okay, well, what I am is what I am. What we've said is what we've said. Who we are is who we are. And I think that's how I know it's working, you know?
Mm. Oh, that's good.
I
Good.
it's
Good
so
shit.
cool. But
No, it's so good because like at the end of the day, like what I'm trying to do on this channel is like evolving literally all the time,
yeah,
which is again, I'm like, I try, and you've been along for the entire ride of like, okay, like you are not well, I guess you could call it a brand, but like, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, you don't have to like define it now and like, that's
yeah,
it. Like, I'm like, I have a thought, I have an intuition, I have a feeling, and I'm going to try it out. And it's not about what necessarily everyone's resonating with, but for me, I'm like, what feels like, oh, this is like cherry on top. This is
yeah,
perfection.
yeah.
Um, and allowing it to evolve. And like, but my main thing is like, you'll also hit a point in shine theory and in general, like, I think this self-discovery journey is you'll hit a point where like you kind of feel like you've almost not nailed it, but you're like you're a far enough along where your sense of self is finally established and taken root. I'm gonna it, I can I want to say I'm going to guarantee that a high percentage of those people get this inner desire to then share the how to other people. How they did that. That has been my driver. And I don't know how or what or whatever. And maybe that's just through being. I've been told by people that we've just, talked about in the spiritual community, like, you do not have to do anything. You just have to be. That was one of the phrases that changed my life. Like, allow yourself to just be, and you've accomplished everything. Whereas me, I'm a little bit of a doer. I want to do something that is fulfilling, and like, I'm like, this is so easy if people only knew. It's such an easy thing, actually. It just takes effort and energy and investment in yourself, and you can literally change your life by like with miracles. I don't know. I'm convinced everyone who is on this journey feels some sort of the sense of doing that and sharing it with people, whether it be through everyday life and Shine Theory, or through like pursuing their passion or what, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, clearly I'm passionate about it because I'm rambling.
No, I love it. No, I love it. And while you're rambling, I want to ramble with you to say I have to thank Anne Friedman, who was, one of my first mentors, who really, before she even named it and had a website about it and talked about it in her awesome book, like that she lived it in her day-to-day life and lived it with me. And it was a life-changing experience. So major shout out to the people who make us who we are today, right?
Oh God, hell yes. And there's so many, which is, I think, when you recognize that and honor that, and then you then become the person that gives back to other people with just
Yes.
with nothing, with no expectation other than like extending the sharing the light, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, this has been amazing.
Amazing.
Big hug. Um, thank you so much for sharing everything about your beautiful self, your mind, your spirit, all of it. Um, this has been seriously awesome. And I think like just in general, like this is like tells me that I need to keep doing this. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate you in all the avenues that you're giving back and sharing knowledge. It's been I learned and I get reminded and learn every time I hear from you. So thanks, Matt.
Have a fantastic rest of your day.
You
Uh,
too.
and we will chat. I'm sure we'll text right after this.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, my love.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. I so appreciate you. If you vibed with this content, I would so love a like from you or a subscribe. It really helps my channel grow in these early days and just any day, honestly. Or even better, share it with someone that you think might benefit from it. This is all about creating this community of badass people who are standing in their power and learning how to be their authentic selves. And as we said if you've made it this far into the podcast and or the YouTube video, thank you. Like, thank you for your investment in creating this and building this up. And I hope that you will take what you've learned today and either share it with people directly or through just the way of being and you pursuing just a lighter way of living. So thank you so much and stay tuned for more. Thanks, guys.